talking, you'll hear different sounds. Earlier, I was able to find that sound that when they use that thing that causes me pain. It sounds to me like something is coming down from the ceiling. And when I feel it, at first it doesn't cause me pain, but then I feel pain and my muscles start to get really tight. And at one time, it used to leave these horrible scabs, and I could feel on my back, like it feels like you know how when you get like a very small scab and you're like, where'd that come from? Maybe I scratched myself. Maybe I something scratched me. It's like to me like scratches. The bigger ones were those dark marks, and it's usually around the muscle. Now they're doing it on the back because they know the back is where my pain is. They said at one time they were targeting my personal area, and that's why I got like cysts along my joints, but that to me isn't the truth. What happened is where I started to get sciatica, and where the nerve is between my leg and my personal area, that hip area, I started to get so tight and painful. And then when I would try to massage it, it would I started to feel it was so tight. So they even admitted the when they target this with whatever this is, I'll call it a laser because that to me is the easiest thing for my brain to understand. So when they target it with like a laser, my body fights it, and it starts to get these cysts, and they then with the muscles tightening, it's painful, all day pain, like pain all day and night. And they even admitted that when I was working at Barclay Center in 2018, I was on the express bus going into Manhattan, and I got to the park. That park, I think, is the one that, has a Shake Shack all the way towards the last stop of the BXM7. And they said out loud, go into the park and you can get some painkillers. Like, why would I do that? Like, why would I? Like, this was happening to me. I'm in my I think at that time, what was that? 8 years ago, and I'm 52. So I'm in my 40s. Why would I ever think to go into a park and look for someone to get painkillers? Like, it was not even happening. So they said they always do this to me. They try to get me to bring up a topic, but these are topics I've already brought up to you folks. Like, they keep having different people work for them. So they don't realize that I've talked about this before. I'm not going to go back and try to find the videos because it's just too much. What they did was they started cutting my videos off so that instead of me having one video, then I would have two. So then at one point I became like so scared that they're sending messages out that I started to chop up my videos. Then they made my videos take forever to upload. So then I made the clips shorter. Then they started to say, well, if YouTube doesn't want extra short clips. YouTube even offers 15-second clips. So it would have been just me becoming crazier and crazier and crazier. So when I'm talking to you about how did I avoid becoming so paranoid, I don't think I did. I think it was like at some point I didn't have time to be paranoid between cutting up short clips, listening to them, trying to get my things done because I still have a regular life. Like, when they said they wanted me just to leave, there's something about my life that I would still have a regular life that I have to do, even if I just ran out into the street. Trust me, it would still be me, like, oh, I have to do this and I have to do that. Like, I still have that. And I think they just said that's that. They just yelled that, meaning like, I think that's part of just who I am. Like, I still have this regular life. Like, oh, okay, I just can't run into the street because then this has to, I have to do this, I have to do that. Like, I have a whole list of things that I still do in my life. So it wouldn't ever be like in their minds, I was just going to go into a park, find someone and get painkillers. Well, that wouldn't be me. It wouldn't be part of my regular life, which is when I said there was just a big change that happened. And why, when they keep saying, well, maybe in such and such you heard us talking and such, it's because they don't want to realize that when this thing started, there was such a big change. It was noticeable. It wouldn't have been just like, well, maybe this, maybe. It was no maybe. When this starts to happen, there is no maybe. It's definitely happening, and they don't want you to have a maybe. It wouldn't be terrorizing you if you were like, maybe that didn't happen. No, terror doesn't do that. That it wouldn't be terrorism. This is terrorism. Terrorism isn't like, oh, that was such a coincidence. Terrorism is never a coincidence. It's really happening. It really happened. Other people know it. It must be that to be terroristic. And so that night when I was going into work and I was in such pain, I worked, and at one point I just felt like what am I going to do? I'm in too much pain. I'm bent over. I can't even pretend not to be. And so I got off work, and they said, well, Shamega, you can't say that that's the same night that I got off work and I cried on a bench. But I can say it because I was just in so much pain, and they knew it, that once I got out of work, I got out of Barclays Center, and they had these benches outside. And I started walking, and I just broke down in tears. And I saw a Black female look at me, and she knew I was crying because even if she couldn't see or hear it, the body movements were that of a person crying. And she looked at me, and it felt like she was filming me. So instead of saying anything, I got up and walked away and moved to another bench and sat down and cried. I was in that much pain, but I didn't want her to film it because it seemed like it was part of this whole type of watching and making sure they see me. Today, they admitted something so powerful. They said this was their, quote, preemptive strike, so that if I was going to start to sue Lacoste, they would know. And that's a big, to me, admission from them, because it meant that it felt like just what I thought it was. Like I'm being watched once I started working at this company. That's so powerful to me, that admission, because it takes that part of the paranoia away. Part of the paranoia is why they kept saying, why did you wait all these years to start? By 2019, it was already happening. Why did you wait? Well, I wasn't sure who was involved. Why would I think Lacoste is involved? Why would there be a preemptive strike when I left? I gave them so much time to know that I was leaving. I was going on to something that I was so excited about that they met me doing. And that's part of this. Part of this is like, why rewrite the history? They want to, everybody who's doing this on their behalf and on their own behalf thought there was a preemptive strike. They knew it wasn't. Anyone who sends you an email like that knows that you're successful. I put something else on the thumbnail, but I'm going to change the thumbnail to that email so that you can see that was how I was approached. I wasn't approached as you're a loser, but we want to give you a break in life. No, I didn't become a loser to them until after this. And when they say they wanted to show that I was a loser, I wasn't good enough or whatever, the people talking. When did that happen? That had to have happened after that email. And that email came to me in late 2015, which goes back to the time frame that I'm talking about. There's another last thing before I just let you listen to them. So going back to the night when they suggested I walk into the park and look for painkillers, that night I looked out the window, and I remember I was sitting in the bus that was overlooking the park, and I just looked into the park, and there were people in there and so forth. And I said, I hope to God, in my head I said this, I didn't say it out loud because I'm on the bus with people. I said, I hope to God I never get to that point in my life where I have to just walk into a random park and look for painkillers. And that's what I was thinking. So when they keep coming up with this quote unquote synthetic telepathy of what I'm thinking, they have no idea what I'm thinking. They said they just said they never really cared enough to know. That's what I've been trying to say. they said in a lot of my videos, I say me a lot or I a lot, because there's something in me that still thinks I can try to get them to see my humanity, but they'll never see it. If they haven't seen it to this point, it was never going to happen. And I say that, when I talk about being Gen X and growing up the old generation would have been, the generation of people who grew up during the Great Depression. What I like about those people is that they're so real. Oh, they were, excuse me. They were so real. And they didn't, they didn't need to tell you things in a fancy way to get you to understand. It was never going to happen. And that's something like what they would say, meaning don't even try it. Don't even think that it was going to happen. It was just never going to happen. They were never going to see me as a human being. So let you listen to them. And if I fall asleep, you'll know, because it'll get very quiet. But you'll still hear them, but I'll be very quiet. So, as you guys probably guessed, I was sleeping. I woke up and they said, I don't get this bandwidth. I don't get the dreams. They pumped it into my apartment to try to include me with them. So it seems like, and this is the next stage of this, when people were writing comments, they mentioned data dreams, meaning these are computer generated things and it could be pumped into people's apartments. It could be people can see them at night, like see things. And it doesn't come obviously from the person. It's not something their heads are seeing. It's something being done to them at night. So that's the next stage of this. I found a YouTube news report. It wasn't a news report from YouTube, but it's a news report on YouTube about how you can make certain people's dreams affect their dreams and sleep with smells. That is being sprayed into my apartment, but it makes things smell. I don't see things. So I'm going to put that in the description, that video about how you can affect dreams by certain smells. Now, the people talking in the background just said, tell them we said the same thing. They didn't. That's not what they were talking about. I was talking about it. This is the new thing to annoy me. When I was telling you in the beginning of this video how certain things didn't annoy me, certain things do annoy me. It annoys me because it's interrupting what I'm saying. So like I'm talking about one thing, then they want credit for things. And that's part of what they're not understanding. It's not about me. It's about them. People who, if you're doing something and it's your thing, they'll insert themselves into it so that whether it wins or not, they can say, well, I helped her with that. Because they aren't doing anything for themselves. Do you understand what I mean? That's their thought process. So you're doing something. All of a sudden they come up and they want to give you your opinion. They give you their opinion. They want you to say, well, this person helped me with this. It could be a failure. They don't care. They don't do anything themselves. So to account for them not doing anything, they can say, well, I was helping her with this. That's ridiculous to me. So that isn't my mind. That's partly how when they were saying, well, we're going to make it look like she's hearing voices. My mind wouldn't think that. I'm, like I said in the beginning, I'm always busy doing my thing. And the people in my life are busy doing their things. It was never this, we're all going to jump onto someone else's life and start asking for credit for stuff. But going back to the dreams. So there is a way of making smells. When they were doing this, they said that years ago, this would have been probably in the 90s. I was working at 9X. At the time, it was 9X. So that would have been between 97 and 2001. So they said older man, he was white, was on a bus. He used to kind of like, I would come off work and he would be there. And what he would do is like, I'm, listening to my Walkman or something. All of a sudden, he would kind of lean close to me in the back behind me on the bus and start to like do something to bother me, not in a friendly way, but more in a creepy way. So they said years ago, I told someone he had an old man smell. So they said to refresh my memory for being mean. Now I was in my 20s at the time. For being mean, they're going to pump in an old man smell. That's the kind of thought process they have. So they're inserting chemicals into my apartment because when I was younger, some old creepy man used to harass me and they said they heard me say he had an old man smell. That's the thought process they have. But going back to what I was saying with the dreams, meaning that would not have come from this conversation. It came from their talking in the background. But since they want credit for things, I'm going to give them credit for that. So going back to dreams, there are people who talk about this, about how they can create data dreams, so computerized dreams. So while you're sleeping, they pump in something. It comes from a computer system, and you then see these dreams while you're sleeping. Now, I did a video years ago about this because they said in 2019, I talked in a video where I said, I'm sleeping and I hear all this talking going on. And it's like people talking back and forth. And someone was pretending to be me. I did that video in 2019. I have it on YouTube. And I wake up and I'm like, who's pretending to be me while I'm sleeping? So they had this whole fantasy world that they've created where there's like a person pretending to be me, someone asking them questions, someone answering, a big thing. So then in probably maybe 2024, they were like, I wrote something down and I wrote that there was something about a dream. What really happened was they started to talk about something, and I woke up to it, and it was some sort of a cigarette or tobacco or vaping or marijuana company, and they were talking about Timbr, and they said something like Timbr without the E. So because I was so angry, I woke up right away and I got a website just like that. They got so mad at me because they know that was their idea. You get what I'm saying? So to prove how they are, they were talking. They said something to me and while I'm sleeping about Timbr without an E. I got up because I said, I have to find a way of proving this is happening to me. I logged in to buy a website and I got it in that name. They got angry, meaning it was not my head. And they got so angry with me that they then said, I saw it in a dream, meaning they then came up with this crazy thing that I got some sort of data dream where they used the word Timbr. I didn't see a dream. I heard them, which proves that it was right. So later on, I looked it up and there was a company, Timbr without the E, Timbr, with smoking, related to smoking. So meaning it was never going to be something they could pass off as me having like, not schizophrenia, but hearing voices. It was always going to have to be legitimate. And that was in 2019. So then they come up with this whole other part of this that's like, well, she must have seen it in one of the dreams that we created. So she's seeing visions. So at some point after this point, which means at this point, I know I'm dealing with real people. It's not supposed to be a dream. It's real people, real businesses, real companies. So then they just said right now, they said she was supposed to give us her opinion on it. I'm sleeping. Now I'm going to have to argue with them. Sorry, this is going to become a side argument. How would I have done that in my sleep? This is not about me giving them opinions, ideas, or credit. It's about proving they were doing this. So now they don't get that this helped prove they were doing this. They say, oh my goodness, cut this whole thing off. They just said that. So once I was able to get to the point where I could prove they did do that, that was years later. I stopped the paying for the Timbr website. And they said, that's how we know you messed us. They just said, that's how we know you messed us all up. Meaning they would have wanted the Timbr website, but because I bought it and it turned out to be a real company, it means that it was real. So anyway, going back to the data dreams, that was a side conversation. We're going right back to the main conversation, which is the data dreams. So in order to get at me, because I did that they felt was spiteful. Again, not my head. It was spiteful. No, it wasn't spiteful. It was to prove that it was really happening to me. And they couldn't then say I'm a crazy person, which they tried to anyway. Because they just said this was going on for too many years. We forgot about that. Meaning there's no way that one human being could have been doing this. This had to be multiple people, which is why I call it gang stalking. So it had to be multiple people doing this. And normal rational people wouldn't have asked my opinion while I'm sleeping. They would have just met with me like a regular person and asked my opinion about something. Anyway, so now someone else said, this goes to show that I'm a professional in this, field. And that's the point. That was why this is so important to prove. It wasn't just using and exploiting me. It was then coming up with a way to say, oh, she's a nut. She's crazy. She's making all of these things up. Impossible. So going back to the data dreams again, if there's a way for somebody to use technology, and they said they know for a fact that in 2019, I must have seen something. They just said that. And I'm going to tell you why they said that. One time, and I've shown you with the aluminum foil disintegrating, and even last night, the video had the sound of whatever came down from the ceiling hitting me. One time, I woke up and I was in such pain. It was confusing. There was something in this room. This is the same room that those videos were filmed in. It was so weird in here. And it was like that. It felt like heat, such heat. I would wake up confused. So at that time, that was when they decided that they would say, write down what we're telling you. I didn't do it. But one night, they talked about something at my job, so I wrote that down. And then another night, they said, how could I say it's one night when it's multiple nights? Well, each night was different. So here we are arguing again. One night, I wrote down about the job, but a different night, I wrote down what I heard them talking about. And they insisted that meant I saw something. What they were saying is, here in the Bronx, there's a big building near the post office. I can't remember the street now. They said Lafayette. It's over near, where White Plains Road is down, all the way down past White Plains Road in the Bronx. There used to be a shopping center. Now I think there's some sort of construction going on there. Then there was a post office, and there was a big white building. And now, years ago, they said Lafayette, but that wasn't the other street. They just said something. Shamega, we're so sorry. They're trying to confuse me because they don't want me to tell you the story. Now I get it. Now, it takes me a few minutes to get it. They don't want me to tell you the story about the dream. So now they're adding all these things. Okay, I understand. But we're still going to talk about the story, but I understand. So years ago, if you used to take a bus, you could take a bus down that street. And I don't remember now what the street's called. And you would take the bus down that street. And there was a post office. It was like a parking area, and then there was that white building. And if you got off the bus, you can walk up. They said it's Lafayette Avenue, Lafayette Avenue, and you would walk past the white building, and then you would walk up, and then there was a high school over there. And that high school years ago was called Stevenson High School. So if you guys are familiar with the Bronx, you know where I'm talking about. They kept saying Stevenson Commons, which is in the other direction. So where they're talking about, Stevenson Commons is on the main street down from the shopping center. And where I'm talking about is up the block in the direction as though you're going to the high school. So I used to live in that area years ago. So that was a place I would pass by all the time. So even if you're talking to me, I can kind of still say, okay, down the block is this, over there is that, So I woke up in 2019. It was a Timbr incident. And I think once that Timbr thing happened, that happened in July 2019, they really came at me, which meant I knew for a fact something is wrong. This isn't the government. The government's not asking me about smoking companies, which is another thing that they kept trying to fight about. They're like, we're going to prove that this is the police and this is the government. The government is not talking about some timber in my sleep at night. Okay, it wasn't the government. I don't know if it could be the government now, but back then it wasn't. So after that timber thing, they really started to fight me. Not just, and I think that's why all that other stuff happened, because it meant that I had proof that this was happening. They said, see, we've never heard this story before. Meaning the people who are trying to take over control of this story didn't remember this. They said, this is so shocking. And I have proof. So they said, can you put that timber thing up? No, I'm not going to, because we already established it did happen. So after that, they really came after me, and they put all this sounds into this room. It was so hot. It was that crackling. I call it like a snap, crackle, pop sound. Like even in today's video that I have up, you hear, it sounds to me like I don't know if it's like a popping sound or it sounds like something's dropping down and bloop. And then it goes, and then another part of the video goes, bloop. It sounds like it's dropping down. That's what I mean. Like you can tell it's not, I'm going to touch my screen and tap it. You could tell it's not like that because the sound is too far away. It's not a sound that's close. Like right now, I'm talking really close to the phone so that you can hear the difference between me talking like this and talking like this. You hear it. You would hear the difference between me hitting my phone and being so far away. So that sound came heavy, like this. I'm going to hit my phone. It would come like that, and my head I would be going nuts. So I woke up one day after hearing the talking, and I wrote down what I heard. They said, you must have seen it because we sent it to you in one of these dreams. And in the dream, it was supposed to be something about Lafayette Avenue, something about a white building, meaning it was descriptive. And as you guys can tell from how you hear me talking about it, that wouldn't be how I would experience that building. That was a building I've walked past for years. So I wouldn't experience it as the white building near, they just said Stevenson Commons. No, that wasn't where it was. It was across the street from the post office. It was down the block from the high school. And they said, somebody else just said, well, we've been going past there for years. There it goes. You get what I mean? It would be that sort of competitive thing. That may have been their experience of it, but it wasn't my experience of the building. So I knew for a fact that they were talking about it, and it seemed like while I'm sleeping, this was happening. So that's when they started to say, well, she's seeing visions. Then they came up with something like, she saw us at night, meaning somebody in this group said that I was able to see them in these dreams. And that started a whole other issue. So then they said, this ties into the identity theft. So they said something, what is this? So then the next dream they had, they said something along the lines of, one of my coworkers at Saks used to wait for me at a locker for me. We didn't have lockers like when that person, my coworker, was with me. We put our stuff into a room, which meant something is off. This isn't my head. They're creating a whole new memory. And that's when on Twitter, I said something about, is it possible for false memories? Because that wouldn't be a memory of mine because it didn't happen. So suddenly they got angry about that because they put it together that they are creating false memories and pumping it into my head at night while I'm sleeping. So we had the Timbr, quote unquote, dream, which wasn't, it was just said, and it was spelled. We had the Lafayette, they just said Lafayette building. No, it's not the Lafayette building. It's the white building because it's not just on Lafayette. There's a street, it's a dead end street. So Lafayette has a street that if you drive or walk down that street, you hit Lafayette and it's like a dead end street. So again, that wasn't my memory. They said they forgot about that. So it's not really the Lafayette building. There's a cross street that hits that building. So it's Lafayette and something, which is something they said they forgot about. Meaning, if it was just a building on Lafayette, that's one thing. But it's a building that is the dead end to that cross street. So it's a building that's actually on across the street from the corner of Lafayette and that other street, which meant to me they're brainwashing me. They're drilling in these memories that aren't accurate. I wouldn't have forgotten about that. They said she used to walk to that post office. Again, that's not even relevant. That's off topic again. Let's go back on topic. So between the fact that there was never a time when my coworker would wait for me for a locker because we put our stuff in a room. They said, was there ever, you see how this was? This was pumping me for information, but giving me false memories that didn't happen. The next dream that they talked about and they said I should have seen was I was supposed to have seen a big black guy. Now, in describing this guy, they said he used to live down the hallway and that at night I woke up and they said I saw him in a dream, and they said that's what got them scared. They said I also saw a girl who I haven't seen since maybe 1987. She went to my elementary school. And she said, so a woman just said something. I was about to say what they said in the dream. They said, a woman just said she was also supposed to be related to somebody. She wasn't. She was a girl who went to elementary school with us. So they said, oh my God. Anyway, so in the dream, they said I saw her, but no, it was like a female who said that night, oh boy, it was something along the lines of the person, she said something to me in a dream, and I woke up and I'm like, of all human beings for me to have this happen, meaning the voices talk about, why would they talk about her? That's when I connected it to the elementary schoolmate. So they said something else that it was around the same time in 2019. And they said something about the elementary schoolmate. And at the time, you can tell I had no idea she was connected to this. That's part of what I'm telling you. At the time, I didn't know the elementary schoolmate was connected to this. So what I'm telling you today would not have been the same thing I said back then because I didn't know. And I even did a video where I said, I don't know who's doing all this. So they said, didn't I say that in 2016 it was her? No. Who's telling them these things? I'm telling you, there's somebody who's trying to change the focus of this to themselves when it never involved that person. They said she busted this. Exactly. Like, this person was never involved in what actually happened. Suddenly, this person becomes the center of this whole thing. What? I don't even know. So going back to what I was saying is in 2019, the little girl, I called her the little girl from elementary school because that's the only way I remember her. I don't think I ever saw her after about 1987. So the little girl from elementary school said something to me in a dream. And she said something like, something, and she said about the apartment. She said something about this apartment. And so there was a big black guy that they talked about. They talked, and it sounded like the way they made it sound wasn't like it was not her. It made it sound like it was the little girl from elementary school talking to me. So then they started to accuse me of actually having seen her while I was sleeping, like a visual. I haven't seen the little girl from elementary school since she was a little girl in elementary school. So by the time they got angry with me that year, it was partially because of the Timbr thing. Then after that, that would have been in the summer. I can't tell you when. So by that point, my internet service was supposed to be disconnected, because by that point I connected it to the Wi-Fi. And I called up in September and said, why is my internet service still on? There was no phone calls coming through because it was suspended, meaning my service was suspended, but the internet was still on. And I recorded the Verizon call. And I never put it up because I didn't know how it fit into all of this. And in the background, you hear them listening. They're actually listening to the call. So when I played part of the Verizon call after I hung up, you could hear the people in the background who turned my apartment into a radio station. That's what this is. It's like a radio station, are talking. I didn't realize that they needed the internet to help them with this broadcast. So when I finally got my internet service turned off, it got worse because they were actually using my internet computer service to harass me. So they said, Shamega, there it is. So they said, oh, see, they realize now that I committed an actual offense against them. But let's talk about this. If they felt that was an actual offense against them, then why lie all these years? That's another part of this. You see, whoever's trying to control everyone and everything in this thing is lying to each and every other person about something. And that's partly why they didn't want this public. Because the more you listen to how they lied and how they twisted and how this one did this and ran and did that, it was to confuse what was really happening. The biggest crime against humanity happened. So someone just said something. So they said, no matter how embarrassing this is, that proves we lied to everybody. I think he said, no, that proves, that's a male voice that said, that proves they lied about me. But it proves, I don't know, am I the only one missing like the bigger point? It proves that they're doing this to people. It's not about the embarrassment. It's not about people's voices, and it's about the technology that exists to make people seem mentally ill, create voices that they think happen in their heads when it's out loud and other people are hearing it. But if you don't have the right people in your life, they'll railroad you right into the mental hospital. If you don't have the right people in your life, they'll put you in prison. Going back to what the whole point of this was, is that they can put dreams and images in your head. We've already established they can put the voices there. That's been done. V2K has been proven it can happen. Now we're on to the dreams. And that's the next thing I'm exposing. And that's the next technology I want to find out more about. I'll put the dream manipulation smells video, which was a news report. It wasn't something that was just done by someone on YouTube, but I found it on YouTube. So they said, one day you're not going to give YouTube credit. I will always give YouTube credit. I will. If it wasn't for YouTube, there would be no way of me storing all of this. They even said they don't have the technology and the data, which is probably why, okay, let's not go into that. I mean, just stay off that topic. They don't have the ability to collect all of this data because it takes too much data to always film, always record. It's just, it's expensive. This was the most money I've ever spent on something in my life. I had to get new technology. If that technology doesn't work, at the time I didn't realize it was possible to hack everything. So I would just, okay, this technology, I'll get a new this and I'll get a new that. And it just got worse and worse and worse. So they don't have the ability to record all this stuff. They don't have the ability. So part of the scam was, oh, we have all these recordings of you. They couldn't because of the amount of technology it would use. And they, at one point, they're having another conversation. So at one point, when I was uploading these videos and I'm searching online, I start finding things on YouTube. And I'm like, oh, okay, that happened. And then I find another video. Okay, that happened. So now I'm finding a lot of V2K videos on YouTube, but I can't find the dream videos. I can find comments people left me, but I can't find videos about dreams. But the time when I did find the videos on dreams, I found it on YouTube and it was a legitimate news report. So I will put that up. So I'm going to end this live stream now. I have a lot more to say, but they're having another issue. I don't know now. I used to do their V2K emotional states. Their emotional states are so much more complex. I guess when it got bigger, the emotional states that they had got bigger. But if I had to say an emotional state they're having is, they just said a nervous breakdown. I don't want to use that phrase. They got caught up in a new problem that once you center around somebody who likes to be the center of attention, it's not me. It's not me. I don't want to be the center of attention in this. This is what happens. When they started to take over my story, they made this person the center of everything, and it just drew them into, they said, isn't that a good thing? It's an excellent thing. That's why I'm going to leave it on that note. Their emotional state, they said, is a nervous breakdown. I don't want to say that. It's when you get caught and you can't keep spinning the same lies anymore. That's the emotional state. I don't know what that word is, but that's it. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for your comments. I'll upload more videos soon.